Welcome to Bump Set Chat, the podcast where volleyball professionals come on and share their stories, experiences, and advice. And today I'm super excited. Two-time Olympian, TJ Sanders. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to dive in here.
Yeah. So the way we start things off, we do a couple of random questions. So you ready?
I'm born.
All right. So you get to do one of two things. One, play around in Augusta, or take 5 strokes off your game for life.
Play around at Augusta.
Okay. All right. All right. Second question. When you were playing overseas, when you got to come home to Canada, what was that meal you looked forward to the most?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, there was a lot, but something that I always really hit, and it was for a bunch of us on the national team, it was hot wings.
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah.
couldn't get good wings overseas. And I always remember there's times where we'd fly back to Canada and we'd stop in the airport to get some wings because it's just like a different classic North American thing that,
Yeah.
you would find um, attempts a lot of times overseas, but they never were quite the same thing. So I always remember, or even just the classic, you go to a sports bar, you have some wings, you watch sports,
Yeah.
just not the norm over there. So
Right.
a lot of times we'd come back and definitely dive into that.
Nice. Yeah. Every time we go back home, we come back with a trunk full of ketchup chips, smoky bacon chips, and just, Canadian chocolate bars. That's our
Yeah.
vice.
Yeah. Well, the other way around is like everything in the US. You're like, oh my goodness, there's so many options.
Right. Yeah, totally. All right. Final question. What's one TV show or movie you watch way too many times?
Schitt's Creek.
Oh, that's a classic.
Yeah, Canadian show. It's also one of the shows that was, kind of like a comfort show. Like when I was either overseas or when I was up north or something like that. You just turn it on. You don't need to really watch it in depth. You know the characters. It's like you're living life alongside them. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was definitely a
Nice.
favorite.
Yeah, mine, that one, and also Seinfeld for me. I'll just throw that on in background and just so many, there's so many moments in that show.
Yeah.
All right. So let's jump into this. So originally, where are you from?
Yeah, so I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I lived there for 8 years, and then I moved to London, Ontario, and I was there until I was 17. So I played basically all my volleyball in Ontario,
Yep.
and then I went off to university and college and started all that.
Nice. And now, when did you first discover volleyball?
Yeah, so I would have been 12-ish. I had an older sister who started playing club. I was a basketball player growing up.
Yeah.
My dad was a basketball coach, so I was very much. He was also a gym teacher, so I grew up kind of playing every sport. But she was playing club volleyball, and I kind of went and saw it for the first time and was like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool. And then I got into my, middle school team and started to really enjoy it. I had an awesome coach that I think that makes a big difference,
Yeah.
when you kind of get into the sport and you've got this awesome coach who's really inspiring and all that sort of stuff. And then, yeah, kind of from there on, it was, only took a couple years for it to turn into, okay, volleyball is going to be the thing, not basketball anymore.
Wow. Yeah, because you don't see that a whole lot. It's more like hoops, especially the time you probably grew up and, you had some really great stars in the NBA, and now you're hooked into volleyball, which, probably even still at the time you didn't have, it wasn't on TV a whole lot to really suck you in.
Yeah, it's funny. I had no concept of what international volleyball. I don't like. It's very common even now to not really have a strong grasp on what the international tournaments are, what pro leagues are, all that sort
Yeah.
of stuff. But I remember I would have been grade 9 going into grade 10, and there was a legendary opposite, Paul Durden from London, Ontario. Actually, I went to the same high school as him, and so Nations League at the time was called World League, and they played in London, and I basically volunteered as a part of our club to be like the sweat wiper guy.
Yeah.
And actually, it's funny. Right before the game, I also had the opportunity to potentially be the mascot. So there was a moment where I was in the like Spike mascot suit, and then they asked me, "Oh, what's your job?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm one of the floor sweepers." And they're like, "Oh, shoot, you have to do that. That's like more important." I was like, "Okay." But what was really cool about that is, I mean, when you're doing that, you're sitting right courtside, like you're as
Right.
close as you could be. And I think from that moment, again, I'd never on TV, never on commercials, never on like whatever. I'd never seen that level of volleyball. And I just remember seeing it and going, oh my goodness, like the power, the speed, the intensity, all that stuff. It looks
Right.
very different than my volleyball at 14. I was like,
Yes.
whoa, this is a totally different sport. And then what was also really cool is our now national team head coach at the time was on the team, Dan Lewis. And he came over to me and was like, hey, do you want to warm up with me? Like, can you pepper with me and whatever? Me and a buddy of mine. And so literally we're out there on the court and Dan Lewis is like hitting down balls at us and warming up and I kept like missing them. I'm so nervous and
Right?
freaking out. And it was funny. I think it was something like 7 years later, 6 years later, whatever. We were teammates on the
Oh,
national team.
wow.
And I remember telling him that story. But that was really what sparked like, whoa, volleyball is it was just different than what I thought. I mean,
Yeah.
when you watch the NBA and guys are doing crazy dunks and taking crazy shots, you're like, whoa, I want to try and do that. And never seeing volleyball at that level, I didn't know what it could really be.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden seeing that, I was like, whoa. And I there's kind of this story that we always tell in my family where on the drive home from the game, I told my parents, I was like, hey, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play on Team Canada. I'm volleyball all in now.
Yeah, nice. And after all of these years, you playing for Team Canada, playing professionally, and it's still part of your life. What is the hook volleyball has that's, had such an impact for you?
Think there's a bunch of different things. I think at first I honestly just loved it. Like I liked there's so many different skills you have to learn, right? Like you have to perfect all these different things. And that was a little bit of an advantage for me. Like I was quite small growing up. And so something like basketball, I could just kind of get bullied. Or I played
Right.
hockey and once hitting got introduced, I was just getting destroyed on
Yeah.
the ice. It was really challenging, which is funny because then I ended up becoming taller than all my buddies that played hockey and all that sort of stuff. But it was just something that I really loved it at the start. And then it's something where you kind of dedicate your life to it. And there's so many things, even now, like looking back to still being involved in the game. I mean, I'm just obsessed about it. There's so
Yeah.
many things I've been curious and trying to figure out for, 20 years. And now it's fun because I can go in the gym and share some stuff that's somewhat elementary to me,
Hmm.
and I can share it and it can make some aha moments happen. And
Right.
what a cool gift that is. But I'll also say, like, when I was playing overseas, and you hear this from a lot of, professional volleyball players and professional athletes in general, it's like then it becomes a job. It becomes a job. It becomes, a little bit more, pardon me, a little bit more okay, I got to show up, got to do this, got to put
Right.
in the hours. Less of that, like, wow, I just love this. And that was the nice give and take of the national team. You'd go play pro and you're there for 8 months. Like, it can get lonely and it can
Yeah.
get intense. If you're winning, everyone's happy. If you're losing, everyone's not. But then you come back to the national team and you're a little bit, you're back with your buddies and you're back competing for something that,
Right.
it doesn't matter if we're not getting paid, doesn't matter if whatever. So actually, when I kind of was injured, and I'm sure we'll go into that, but when I was injured and stopped playing for a little bit, I didn't think that I would be still in volleyball. I was
Yeah.
kind of like, okay, I'm ready to kind of see what the next phase looks like. And then a lot of things happened that
Yeah.
brought me back in.
And the other aspect of volleyball that I've loved, I'd stepped away for a number of years until my daughter got involved in it and sucked me back in. The volleyball community alone, it's just I think it's one of the best sporting communities out there. And you're playing this from we in our little town here, we have a Tuesday night volleyball night where there's three other dads or two other dads with their kids. They're coming out and we're all playing together as adults. And I don't know other sports that you can really do that in.
It's so true. It's really cool. Not only is the community, it feels really small. Like I feel like I can go to any point in the world and I probably have a volleyball connection there,
Yeah.
which is quite unique to say. And also I think it's fun because it's a sport that you fail a lot. Like that's such a core part of it. You're not
Hmm.
trying to be perfect. You're not trying to whatever. So you know you're going to fail, and you have to be able to be resilient through that, and just kind of have fun with it as well. And then on top of that, I think it's a unique sport that again you look at hockey, you look at basketball, you look at soccer. Somebody can just hold on to the ball,
Right.
right? Somebody can have it and do what they want with it. Where exactly if you're the parents playing the kids in basketball, you can just hold on to it, post them up, and make a layup or whatever.
Yeah.
Where in volleyball, it's like you're just reacting and kind of putting your best technique forward.
Right. Yeah. And now, during high school, was club a part of the ecosystem in London for boys volleyball?
Yeah, 100%. So I played. It was a club called Forest City. It was quite a strong program, and a lot of um, yeah, a lot of the guys on my high school team. My sister played club. It's almost when you look at the U.S. it's so unilateral and how popular volleyball is for girls than
Yeah.
boys. It kind of felt like it was almost the same in
Yeah.
Canada. I think it's evolved a lot. Like the sport's grown so much, so
Hmm.
it might be the discrepancy might be a little bit more now. But back in the day, it felt very much equal a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah, and that's same with me growing up in Newfoundland. There's, it was not a, it's, it's uncommon if a school didn't have a boys program for volleyball. Whereas down here, especially in the Northeast where I live, it's rare to see a boys high school volleyball. So it's glad there's club to, bring kids over to it and boys to play in there. So, but after club, after high school, college was next or university, you ended up at University of Manitoba. What was your path there?
Yeah, it's funny. So my my 16U year for club, we were, I guess you could say, kind of like an average team. Like we didn't have much success. We were kind of just okay. And then 17U again had kind of average though most of the year, and then we ended up winning nationals. And I ended up winning MVP of that tournament, and that kind of like rocketed up to okay, now all these schools are talking to me and
Right.
stuff like that. Um, and then 18U, we had a really great year. We, won almost all of our games. And we were really strong. And I think for me at that time, even looking back to when, I was 14 and watching the national team play, everything was kind of directed at, okay, how do I make the national team? Or how do I go to play professionally? I was making my choice based off of that. I wasn't looking for academics. I wasn't looking for, frankly, I wasn't even really looking to go and win a university championship. I was like, I'm looking for a stepping stone.
Right.
So yeah, so then I talked to a bunch of different schools. Didn't talk to that many in the States, but did talk to a few. Then I was kind of just, I really wanted to go out to Western Canada. That's where kind of the strongest volleyball
Hmm.
was. And then growing up in Winnipeg, and my parents being in Winnipeg for a long time, my dad graduating from University of Manitoba, I kind of ended up decided to settle there. And then yeah, I kind of began this roller coaster ride because I was only there for 1 year. And I went over to McMaster, and I only played 1 year there as well. And
Yeah.
then I kind of went to our national team. So
Oh wow. And then, prior to playing for U of M, you'd also played in the Canada Games. When did the national team start showing up on your radar?
yeah, it's funny at the time. It's really cool because now we have all sorts of youth programs. There's something called the National Excellence Program, NEP, that's really big and really cool of what they've set up. There's also a bunch of youth national teams and things like that. Back in that time, there wasn't. There was periods where they had youth national teams, but for
Yeah.
my age group and all that, we didn't. So it really wasn't until after my first year of university that there became the opportunity. So I played for Team Ontario when I must have been, yeah, like 16 and 17. And then there was the opportunity that they were going to actually pick the junior national team based off of that tournament. So I played again for Team Ontario after my first year. And that was when I was selected to our junior national team. And that was kind of the first, stepping stone. If you look at it all, it's like, okay, I was playing high school, then I was playing club, having some success there. Then I was playing for our provincial team, having some success there. Then the junior national team. And that was kind of like the pathway,
Yeah.
kind of leading me towards the national team.
And then when did you get that call to, for the senior team?
Yeah, it's funny. Even looking back, probably one of the coolest moments of my national team journey was hearing that I was selected for the junior national team. Like it was just this crazy thing. I remember we were all in the gym competing in that tournament, and the list came out or whatever. I made it, and I remember going back and I had to pack up. And as I'm packing up, it felt very surreal. I'm like, oh my goodness, like the path is actually kind of happening.
Yeah.
So I played on that team for 2 years. And then there's kind of this gap between, okay, when you're on the junior national team, you're quite young. And then it's like, okay, now you end up usually making sort of like a B team, or
Hmm.
they go to the university games or something like that. So I ended up playing 1 year on the university games team, or the B team sort of.
Yeah.
And then it was really a little bit later in that summer, I ended up actually traveling with the A team. I kind of got lucky. Like it was kind of a moment where a couple setters got injured. I had a good performance in this early game. I was one of the younger players on that B team, if not the youngest. I think actually Nick Hogue was the only one younger than me. And then I had the opportunity to travel. It wasn't a sanctioned event. It was
Yeah.
just sort of we played in France, we played in Slovenia against some really good teams, and I was there for it. And then we had a tournament. I think it was in like September, October, or whatever, that I also traveled to as an alternate. So really, I kind of had this moment where I went from, I remember making that B team for our national team, and the coach kind of saying, "Hey, you barely made it. You're our second setter. Like you got to put some work in," kind of thing.
Yeah.
Again, being younger and undersized and all that sort of stuff. To then a couple months later, I was traveling with the A team, and then the next summer we came back. Then I played professionally that year. The next summer we came back. Same thing due to some injuries and different stuff. I had the
Yeah.
opportunity to play a little bit more, and then that was a world championship summer, and then I was starting at the world championship. It
Wow.
was like a pretty quick transition. Um, and then yeah, so I was playing in VNL, and or I guess at the time it was still called World League,
Yeah.
and then at World Championships, and that was like, boom, crazy things happened in a pretty short period of time.
And do you still remember that first time you got that jersey, with Sanders on the back of it or the maple leaf?
Yeah, I mean the junior national team one was crazy because
Yeah.
and still at that time you're young and you don't really know what it means, but I'm like, oh, that's the same thing that those guys have
Yeah.
or those girls have, right? And you're like, okay, that's pretty cool to be connected to it. But I remember the first call I got up to play in World League. I was actually at home and they were kind of bringing me on the road for an event, and it was in Vancouver, so it was in Canada, which was great.
Yeah.
And I remember going there, and that was the first time because the junior national team is still a little bit different. The tournaments are not these big scale, high level events.
Yeah.
But I remember going and playing that one, and the lights, like the lighting for TV was insane. I'm like, I can't even see the ball. Like we're playing this giant hockey arena.
Yeah.
It's going to the ceiling of this hockey arena. I can't see the ball. It was pretty I was pretty spooked, but in
Yeah.
this like cool, excited kind of way.
Absolutely. And I asked this from some of the other guys about like, Micah Christensen, that first time in the senior gym, you there like, and he was like, I'm just I'm just gracious to be able to wipe the sweat off the floors. Was there a moment like that where you walked in, it's like, wow, I'm here.
You know what's funny? I think a lot of this came from being undersized from when I was younger. Like every team I was on, because I also had a late birthday. I was born in December, so I was always kind of shorter in my class. I was
Yeah.
always smaller on all my teams. I think I always had a little bit of that chip on my shoulder, kind of like gritty mentality.
Yeah.
But I certainly remember when I went in the gym was with the senior team, and I'm like, okay, the game is played above the antenna. Like, what's going on here?
Right.
Like, I'm not up there. And I definitely remember there's a couple times we had an opposite at the time named Gavin Schmidt, where he would just hit clean over the block at us, and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
So I remember
Like
being,
you can't soft block
yep,
it and throw your arms all the way back.
I'm like, what do you want from me? I'm playing defense when I'm blocking, basically.
Yeah.
But I do remember a lot of times being, having this combo of this is what I've always wanted. The last, whatever it was, 7 years, everything's been kind of directed at this, and now I have this opportunity. I want to also prove myself.
Yeah.
Like don't get me wrong, I was very grateful. It was amazing. I was excited to be in the gym, but I very much from day one was like, no, I'm here to win and compete and prove myself
Right.
and try to find what my role is or my spot is. Again, I think a lot of that came from because that's every gym that I went into. I had to kind of lean into that. I always remember guys that I'd either played with in basketball or volleyball that were the, big guys that were dunking on people and
Yeah.
doing cool things. I was like, wow, I've never had that experience. I was always had to, I had to prove myself a little bit more. And yeah, it was just a really cool environment to be a part of. And,
Yeah.
and one big thing too is when you're in a training facility, and I think in Canada it's slightly unique in this way, but it is like hardcore. Like guys are going full tilt all the time.
Yeah.
Like every practice is more intense than a game. Games are way easier than practices, even than like early sessions. So that was something that I also had to get used to. When I always joke when I first made the junior national team, I'm super pumped and we travel out and we have our first kind of practice. And I think it was like the first 3 days, it was just skills work. And I
Yeah.
literally was just standing at the net, setting, like so boring. It wasn't setting anyone, wasn't doing anything, working on a few technical cues
Yeah.
to the point, I'm not sure if you ever experienced this, to the point where I was setting so much that my fingernails were like bleeding
Oh no.
because I just set so much. And I was like, wow, this is kind of boring. But that was also a really important moment for me to recognize, yeah, repetitions, especially as a setter, but in volleyball in general, are so crucial that
Yeah.
we're so under-repped, let's say, sometimes when we're young in Canada. Because if you go to practice, okay, as a setter, yeah, maybe you're playing a little bit, maybe you set the ball like 40 times. You
Right.
need 40,000 sets to kind of get through these
Yeah.
repetitions. So I remember that moment. And then I remember when the A team was there and I kind of got to step alongside and just the intensity of everything they were doing.
Yeah.
Everything was life or death, it felt like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so you bring up a good point there with the repetitious. It's like players I've talked to who go from North America over to Europe, and or even Japan. Just the repetitious. It is just so much skill work, and it's more so like, and also you hear a lot of like the European players are more developed, all round developed than here. It seems like there's a lot of focus on individual individual positions rather than the whole volleyball circle.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. When I look at repetitions, the whole goal is just to get to a place where you never have to think about anything.
Right.
Again, volleyball moves too fast. There's too many cues you have to pick up on. And like we were talking about before this, you're never holding on to the ball. So I'm really just trying to put my body in a position that it has the opportunity to react in the way that I want it to.
Right.
I need to put in so many repetitions that it doesn't matter if I'm numb. It doesn't matter if I'm having any thoughts. I can still go and
Right.
perform. And ultimately, that's what we want as a setter as well, right? I want to consciously be thinking about tactical decisions, and then my body just goes and does it for me.
Yeah.
But it's certainly something that, yeah, it was kind of like eye-opening. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, we got to do a lot because it's true. I mean, a lot of the whole ecosystem in Europe, where if you're really good at 15, you're going to go play on a pro team, and now
Right.
you're playing with men, and you're going to be having those practices where you're getting a lot of repetitions. You're going to be put up against those so much more. Where for sure in North America, it's okay. Now you're going and playing a tournament,
Yeah.
and I'm sure the top attacker gets a lot of repetitions at attacking that tournament, but they're also getting repetitions not like that 15-year-old in France against 30-year-olds. They're getting those repetitions against other 15-year-olds,
Right.
right? So it's certainly something that just as a system we have to be in North America aware of and try to adapt to for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. And now, after university, college or going overseas pro was next. Was that always the plan? And then what was that sort of transition or that sort of process to find a team and head over?
Yeah, it's definitely in at the time with volleyball in Canada, it was super clear that we need to play professionally. Like we need to be getting that level of experience, especially as a setter, right? Like
Yeah.
for an attacker, going and working on your physicality, doing different things is can be really valuable. But as a setter, it's all about running the game, right? So I need to
Yeah.
be in games to run, right? So yeah, my first year would have been after that B team summer. Honestly, I wasn't getting I've gone through several agents, but I had an agent at the time. Most of this was kind of hooked up through the national team, through the coaching staff and all the connections that they had. Because they understood that, okay, for us to elevate our national team, we have to start creating some
Right.
pathways overseas. So I got that agent, but honestly, I wasn't really getting that many looks early on. Again, I say 6'3", but that's a lie.
Yeah.
But I'm an undersized setter from Canada with no experience. So
Right.
obviously, not a lot of people are jumping at that. One of the most fascinating things that I've experienced through my whole career is that now, Canada being a little bit more on the map, there's so many guys and girls going overseas
Yeah.
earlier to really great situations. I was just really fortunate that the first team, the first contract that I got, there's a Canadian that was playing there, and their setter got injured, and he was like, "Hey, we need a setter." It was like after the first game, second game, or whatever of the
Oh, wow.
season. So I jumped over there, and actually the same thing happened the next season.
Oh, shoot.
So yeah, so that first time it was guy got injured, awesome, went over. Next time, guy got injured on a Champions League team, went over, and then I was, solidifying myself as a starter on the national team. I'd now played in Champions League, so I played against Italian teams and played
Yeah.
against these higher level teams, and we were having some good performances. So then it became a little bit easier. But back in the day, I mean, it's funny. My early days with the national team, it wasn't just obvious that everyone on the national team would have a contract. It
Right.
wasn't just obvious that like we have like almost 100 guys overseas right now playing. Back in the day, it was like 15.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see, this evolution of, the maturity of volleyball in Canada, but also just the respect that we're given overseas. Obviously, coming from a lot of hard work and athletes
Right.
that have
Yeah.
performed really well over there. But yeah, so the beginning and again, I was kind of expecting it to be that the national team and the coaches kind of primed me for that. Like, yeah, okay, if you were a 6'10" outside, if you were a 6'6" setter who had already had all this experience, yeah, maybe it's going to be a little bit easier. It's going to be hard,
Yeah.
but don't worry, it'll pay off, kind of thing. That was
Yeah.
always kind of the language or the narrative that was kind of spun around it.
Nice. Yeah. So, having a lot of players from, North America that went over and played pro, it's, like Kavika Shoji, said to me, it's not rainbows and unicorns from, you think of the pro athlete. It's not, you're scraping by possibly. You're lonely. You don't have family around. You may be in situations where, English, you may not even have an English speaking player there to work with.
It's funny, early days, going back to those kind of first few contracts, at that time, we were prepared in a way. So after my last year playing in college, I went and I spent a year with it was called the full-time center at the time. it's evolved a little bit into what NEP is now. But we trained full time for that year. So we didn't really play that much. We ended
Yeah.
up going to France and competing a little bit and doing some different stuff, but it was really just training to prepare us to go and perform overseas. And, when I did go overseas, again, I was very primed and probably coming from that same thing of always being undersized and a little bit gritty,
Yeah.
where those first few years, I didn't care. I'm like, it could be awful. Whatever. I'm here to get better and I'm here to go to
Yeah.
the Olympics. I'm here to become the best player in the world. Like, if it's bad, it's bad. And I think that was very unique to the ecosystem of the national team at the time because we were 22nd in the world or something. We had to grind a little bit
You
more.
had to have a chip on your
Um,
shoulder.
yeah, exactly. So I wasn't, those first few years, it didn't really impact me at all. I was like, good, make it harder. Like, I
Yeah.
don't care. That's great. But then it reached the point where then I was having some success, and especially on the national team, and then I was having success professionally, and then I was going to these bigger clubs that then I started to realize, okay, shouldn't it get easier or
Yeah.
shouldn't something evolve there as well? And the longer you do it, the more isolating it becomes because you're spending more time. You've now been gone for 7 years from back home. You've now done all that sort of stuff. So I think those first few years, I was so kind of laser focused on with my ambition and what I
Yeah.
wanted to do with the national team and all that it was looking back extremely isolating, very lonely, not the quality of life I would want now, and not
Right.
the quality. I would do a lot of things differently, but I was just so focused on like singularly focused on that ambition. And but then later, obviously, yeah, you're like, oh, okay, it's not so easy. And not only, you're there with one purpose, you're there to win volleyball games.
Right.
So if you're winning volleyball games, life can be great. If you're losing, life can be really awful,
Yeah.
especially because there's nothing else, for me at the time. For a lot of athletes, there's maybe no family to go home to. There's
Right.
maybe no hobbies that you're taking up. There's no, I remember a couple years I would move into my apartment and I would do nothing to it because I know I'm gone in 7 months.
Right.
Which is like the exact same as when I get in and I leave. I was, very much a contract worker. So, yeah, as it kept moving along in my career, it got more challenging because I had more insight to, the things I wanted in my life and the
Yeah.
quality of life that I was looking for. But those first years, I was like, I was ready to run through a wall. Didn't really matter.
Nice. Yeah, you said contract. That's another thing aspect of this I don't think people realize is, it's rare to get multi-year contracts when you're playing pro volleyball. So you're really just year to year and you don't know where you may be, 2 years out from now.
Yeah, that's super common, and it's funny because I didn't want multi-year contracts. Like when I first started, again, thinking it from the lens of this sort of ambitious direction, I don't want to be somewhere for more than 1 year. I want to go to the better team. I want to go to the better league. I want to win the next thing. And again, there is an element of that where being an undersized Canadian, starting in kind of the smaller
Hmm.
leagues, and I had to kind of grow periodically throughout that. But yeah, I never was looking for multi-year contracts. Again, because the reason for me doing it
You had an
was
end
the
goal in
ambition of
mind.
these other things. Exactly. It wasn't quality of life at the time. I think
Yeah.
a lot of guys and a lot of girls, they reach a point in their career where they're like, yeah, but maybe I just settle here for 3 years.
Right.
I can kind of set up shop and have a little bit of that better community and all that sort of stuff. I know a lot of people that did that. I never did.
Yeah.
I never went back to the same team.
And now, after years of experience there playing pro, what advice do you have for that university kid that's thinking, "Hey, I want to go overseas and play"?
I think in North America especially, we lack a perspective of almost like grit or how to kind of win games. And I think sometimes, a lot, especially early in my career, a lot of it was, oh, I'm so lucky to be playing professional. Yeah, it's fine that we don't have Wi-Fi. Oh, it's fine that whatever, like I'll take what I can get, that kind of vibe. Where I think it's more than okay to stand up for yourself, to have boundaries,
Hmm.
to commit to those things because ultimately that's what's going to show up when you're also on court,
Yeah.
right? If you've got this backbone that you can do, anything and where those lines are, you just become a lot stronger in big moments. So for me, yeah, I think, looking back, I was very much just like, oh wow, I'm playing in Champions League. Okay, like lucky me, as opposed to, no, this is a part of the pathway and keep moving forward. And then honestly, get some other hobbies, get some community, get some other things.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the athletes that I've talked to that have had a really successful career over there, they either, their family was with them or they, are really into music or they're really into other things and they really dive deep into those other aspects of their life where I just think I was so solely focused on volleyball that, yeah, if it's going great, okay, great. If it's not, then your kind of whole world turns upside down a little bit.
Right.
And I really didn't invest in building community too much in these different spots. I didn't, like sink my teeth in even something like, yeah, make your apartment yours.
Right.
Bring way more things than you want to bring, that you even think you should bring. Because I would
Yeah.
go over with like one suitcase, and I would just unpack my clothes, get the clothes from the club, and that's all I would wear
Yeah.
the whole year. Where it's like, no, make it. This is your life,
Right.
and make it your life.
Yeah. And now your pro career over there. You played in the Netherlands, Switzerland, Poland, and Turkey. What were some of the highlights from some wonderful countries you were in?
Yeah, there were some really cool ones. I mean, the Netherlands was this really nice bridge because it was very similar to culture in North America. Like a lot of English speaking. I had two Americans and a Canadian on my team. So it was really easy. It was very much just like continuing the college experience. Then Switzerland was fantastic because that's when we got to play Champions League and we played against some good Italian teams and we beat a bunch of teams that we maybe shouldn't have and had some really good showings there. And then we won the league there quite handedly. And then, yeah, I mean, Turkey was cool because it was kind of this moment into, okay, like a big established club. Like now we're starting to compete for, like bigger competitions. So now
Yeah.
being back in Champions League, getting out of the pool was an obvious thing. Like we better get out of the pool. Where early days it was more we're just excited to be there a little bit. And then yeah, I played a few years in Poland, and actually it was funny. I think one of the highlights when I first played in Poland, which was actually before that first Turkish experience, I was joining a club late. So it was this really bizarre year where I signed a contract with a team again for Champions League, and the team basically went under. I think like someone in in like higher up went to prison.
Oh
There's some whole
shoot.
money. There's a bunch of money stuff. This is not uncommon in
Yeah.
professional volleyball. And so I remember getting a call being like, hey, I was supposed to leave in like 2 days. Like, hey, we still want you to come, but we can't pay you.
Oh God.
And I was like, well, I'm going there to be paid. So I don't know if that's
Right.
the play. And it was funny. I remember having conversations with my agent and other people, and it's like, well, maybe you go and it's good exposure and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but what?
I'm not a
This
charity.
doesn't sound like the right. This doesn't sound like the right. Also, even just the environment. I don't know if that's the environment I want to be in.
Right.
So I ended up saying no. So then I went to Turkey for a little bit, but then I ended up we had a big match for the national team versus Cuba to qualify for the Rio Olympics in January, so kind of in the middle of the season,
Hmm.
and went and played in that, and we lost. And I'd had all this chaos in the early half of the year, and then I actually went and I was supposed to go to this team in Germany, fell through last second, so I'm back and fell through last second. Then I signed a contract in France, and then I got another offer from Poland later that day, and I had to buy myself out of that contract from
Oh
France.
shoot.
Went to Poland because Poland, is a league I always wanted to play in, really, really high level. But the team, I believe the team was 1-17 or something, so they were bottom of the barrel.
Right.
But I was like, oh, nice, I get to go play in Poland. That's great. Went to Poland, and we ended up winning our first 5 games that I was there. Like I was 5-0 after going 1-17. So then all of a sudden in Poland, like boom, I kind of had this notoriety of being obviously a high level setter and that
Yeah.
sort of stuff. And that was really when it clicked that then I started getting like after that moment, I started getting offers kind of from all over the place. Prior to that, it was always kind of this weird phase. Okay, what's the best opportunity for me? The national team kind of helped me out and stuff like that. So then, yeah, when that ended up happening, kind of opened up some more opportunities. And then it was like, okay,
Yeah.
we're playing some high level volleyball.
Nice. And during
And then,
your
oh, actually, I
oh
should mention probably the biggest highlight of it all was then when I was at the time, we were for sure one of the top clubs in Europe. We ended up winning the Polish Cup. That was a pretty cool moment. Whatever it was, 20,000
yeah.
fans, and going out and winning that was definitely one that was pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah, I've heard, even just watching the games on TV from Poland, like those fans love their volleyball.
What's cool too is it's such a deep league. There are so many good Polish players. When I'm on the national team, okay, you play all these other countries and you kind of know all the top players from everywhere, but Poland is extremely deep. There's guys on, the fifth place team in Poland and they've never played on the national team, but
Yeah.
they're an incredible volleyball player. And so yeah, it's very much bred into their culture. It's an amazing sport. Not only are the fans great, but games are on TV and
Yeah.
there's billboards everywhere of volleyball players, and it's a very different culture than Canada for sure
Yeah,
around volleyball.
absolutely. Yeah, one thing I want to jump back to that, I often talk about is, when you're playing in college or university, there's a certain style of volleyball. But now when you're playing at the national level, different countries are playing different styles of volleyball. Was that a big adjustment for you to get used to when you go play like something like Poland or Turkey or Japan?
It's funny. I talk often with younger athletes about this because we get locked into these styles of volleyball. Like just because the fact that Canada has a style of volleyball or the US has a style of volleyball doesn't mean that that's what my team should be playing. Meaning, if you are the most physical team in North America, maybe you want a style that's a little bit more akin to Russia or Cuba or something like that.
Right.
If you are extremely undersized, maybe you want to lean into more towards a Japan or something like that, Argentina or whatever.
Yeah.
Because ultimately those styles are there to leverage your advantages and to, move away from those disadvantages,
Right.
find some different solutions. I think when, at the time when I was on the national team, it becomes really obvious right away, right? You play Japan, totally different volleyball.
Yeah.
You play Russia, totally different volleyball, and you're like, whoa, this is kind of crazy. And then playing overseas, there are different things that you need to pick up on, especially, and I think it's different for each position. But as a setter, running an offense and orchestrating things, something like Turkey when I was there at the time, it was very much an opposite heavy league. They're going to have a big time opposite on your team, and they're going to get over 50% of the balls,
Yeah.
and that's just normal. Little bit similar to Japan and Korea and leagues like that. Now we still had, I had still had an Olympic gold medalist as one of my outsides. We still had, really high level players everywhere, but just the nature of the league, that's kind of just what it fed into. So
Yeah.
then my tactics obviously are trying to leverage those things as well. Then you go to Poland and it's obviously very different. Like it's a very skilled but very physical league.
Yeah.
So then things change a little bit. Where when I was in Switzerland and playing in Champions League, it was like, okay, we're the underdogs. We got to take big swings.
Yeah.
Like we got to try and run a super fast offense. We got to try and do different things because we're undersized and we
Right.
have these disadvantages. So I always thought that was fun. I liked the fact that it was different. And
Yeah.
again, it goes back to I really think when I was undersized playing basketball, undersized playing volleyball, I'm like, okay, this guy in front of me is 6'8". How can I figure out to beat him?
Yep.
Because there's some way I can do it. And I think I just brought that with me in these different experiences internationally or professionally. It's just like, okay, we're back in the same spot again,
Yeah.
and we're still trying to figure out this way to find some advantages and to win this game.
And during your playtime, did you have any pregame rituals? Did you have to have a nap or certain meal before game time?
Yeah, it's funny. I think I definitely was like addicted to caffeine over over my time as a player. I mean, a really classic day would be you wake up, you got an espresso or two, you go to your morning training, you come home, you eat something, you nap, you wake up, you got an espresso or two again, and then you go and you play. So yeah, a lot of my time overseas pregame was spent having an espresso with
Yeah.
with the guys and getting kind of pumped up. That was definitely something that was pretty
All
common.
right. And when you were playing, if you had a couple of bad plays, what was your go-to to reset, to refocus?
Yeah, great question. I think going back to that sort of chip on my shoulder, it was when things aren't going great, I needed to kind of engage in some more aggression. Like I needed to be more aggressive. I couldn't get passive. I didn't have the advantage of being so technically sound or so physical to get away with things and
Yeah.
just trust it. I needed to lean into it a little bit more. So a lot of it would come from, serving more aggressively or especially defense. Defense is one of those things where it's very much an attitude and putting yourself in the right position. And again, being undersized, I'm like, this needs to be an advantage of mine. And then it also would as a setter, it would be, okay, I got to connect with my teammates,
Right.
right? Like I got to make sure my attackers, how do I make them feel super confident? How do I make them feel, even though we lost the last 3 points, how can I build trust in them right now? Like,
Yep.
what can I do? So, we had a lot of tools with our national team, and this is a little bit more later in my career. But any moment where things would not be going great, I would instantly snap into going back to my game plan or going back to tactics. Like I think it's something. So we use the language on the national team of gathering information. So there's maybe infinite information that you can gather. There's so many things that I can pick up on.
Hmm.
Okay, there are lights on the roof that's going to impact things. Is the coach talking to the middle blocker right now? Is the libero deeper for some reason? What kind of serve is coming? Who's passing well on my side? Who's attacking well? What does this middle want to do? Is he good at read blocking? Is he going to commit? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
if things aren't going great, I'm going to snap back into that mode, and then I'm just back into the flow of it,
Yeah.
right? I'm not caught because okay, the reality is, especially a sport like volleyball, there's going to be so much momentum. You're going to lose a lot of points.
Hmm.
As a setter, you're going to miss sets. We could go watch the Olympic final. You're going to see a lot of sets that the connection's off. Where a lot of times, in especially in North America, when we're young, we assume, oh no, it has to be perfect every time. Well, your assumption of perfection is going to lead to you not taking enough risk. You know, it's funny. I
Yeah.
was talking to Luciano De Cecco, one of the best setters in the world, maybe of all time. Very good setter.
And he
And he
doesn't
used to say,
look like a setter. Let me just say, he looks like he's just coming
yeah,
off his 9 to 5 job, and you see him set. It's like, holy crap.
yeah, really, 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 really incredible setter. I mean, Argentina produces per capita like so many good setters. It's wild. And I feel very fortunate that early days we spent a lot of time playing in Argentina and playing against Argentinians and stuff like that. So you get to see that. But he used to say like, you know, I'm almost trying to miss like 1.5 sets is sort of the marker.
Hmm.
If I miss more sets than that per set, then I got to dial down the risk and I got to lock in on my technique. If I
Yeah.
miss less than that, I'm probably not taking enough risk. I'm probably not putting my attackers in the best situation possible. So I need to get comfortable with making mistakes. I need to get comfortable with the connection not being perfect. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. You go to a club tournament now, and the setter sets the outside and it's too tight, and she gets blocked, and they go away from each other, or they're
Right.
upset about it, or they're whatever. This is volleyball. This is like the fun of it. If I'm playing against a team and I see them react like that, I'm thinking, good, we're going to beat this team now, right?
Right.
So for me, it becomes, okay, make sure that connection's there and then get back to your game plan. There's so many things that you can pick up on that, you know, you lose 3 points, whatever. I mean, it was a tough adjustment too, where when you're playing internationally, there's times where somebody goes back to the service line and there's nothing you can do.
Right.
They're going to get three aces in a row. And I'm not here shaming my passers. It's impossible. They served it 130 kilometers down the line, and they
Yep.
served it 125. Okay. I need to get really comfortable weathering that storm and going back to my process.
Yep.
Okay, what's my game plan? What's my game plan? Maybe this has shifted my tactics a little bit.
Yep.
Maybe I know this pass is going to pull me off the net, so I want to run something different with my middle, whatever it is. But the more I'm just engaged in those tactics and engaged in my game plan and gathering information, you're not then sitting there dwelling the fact that you missed that dig or that
Right.
serve or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? And I do think, you know, you look at younger or club volleyball or high school volleyball where and I've worked with a lot of athletes now where, you know, communication is this big thing. But sometimes it's like, yeah, but what do I say? We're
Yeah.
so caught up in, hey, let's side out. Hey, come on. Hey, let's do this. Where we're not actually giving or sharing a lot of information.
Yeah.
I think all of us as younger athletes can gain some insight from gather as much information as possible, then share that.
Right.
Oh, it's weird. Last serve, she went short. Watch the short serve.
Yep.
Hey, she keeps tipping down the line. What should we do for that? Do you want me to get it? Do you want to get? Then all of a sudden, you're in the process of trying to figure out how to win this
Hmm.
game. You're not caught up in, oh my goodness, it's 13-10,
Right.
which, you know, it's going to happen sometimes.
Right. And two things off that. One is communicating. I think often the kids are taking that communication from their peer players as negativity and just accept it as information and just take it, absorb it and then move on with it.
Yeah, and I think that also comes down to what that relationship is. You know, like when I was younger, I was extremely stubborn. You know, I've kind of talked on this chip on my shoulder, and I was not a good teammate. Like I would not encourage athletes to be like I was, because I was very hard on my teammates. You know, it was more like telling them what to do
Hmm.
or shaming them for not doing it right, which just comes back to I was more of an ego thing. That wasn't, I was actually trying to help. Yes, did I want to win? But it was more, you know, coming from that posture.
Yeah.
But I think it also comes down to the relationship. I've got guys that I played with for 12 years that if I tell them, oh, hey, this is what's happening here, they're going to go, oh, thank you. I also have guys that I played with that if I tell them that, they're going to go, okay, who are you to tell me that?
Right.
Right. I want to understand what that relationship, it's not all equal.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Do I want to be able to receive information appropriately? Sure. But we also have to be committed to this relationship. If it's
Yeah.
not, if I know somebody's not going to receive it well, then I'm not going to go do it and say, well, it's their fault they didn't receive it well.
Right.
No, my goal is to help my team. My goal is to help them.
Yeah.
My goal is to win, right? It's not just to prove that I did the right thing. So I
Yeah.
think sometimes, you know, investing in those relationships and understanding that the dynamic of that relationship is important. And there's going to be different ways to say it.
Yeah.
I've had teammates of mine that were incredible teammates that, you know, we were in a position where they could push me and I wanted them to push me. But if somebody else did that, I'd be like, whoa, we're not there.
Right.
That's not
Yeah.
where it's at. And that's okay. That's okay. I don't think that it needs to all be the same, because there's that level of trust that comes. Same thing with coaches. I've had coaches that have pushed me extremely hard, and it was an awesome thing.
Yeah.
I've also had coaches that I know don't really care about the team or me or this and try to push you the same degree, but I know it's self-serving for them, so it doesn't land the same way.
Yeah.
So yes, communication is, I mean, I think it's a very nuanced skill set, but it's also something that, yeah, you want to invest in those relationships. It doesn't mean you have to be best friends with them off the court,
Right. Yep.
but invest in, hey, we're on the same team. We're trying to get the best out of each other, and find a way to do that. It's going to look different for different, we're all very different players. We're all
Completely.
very
Yep.
different people, and
And
that's okay.
the other thing I wanted to, I watched the video and you brought up a really good point. We were talking about making mistakes. Young kids making mistakes. It's okay. You don't need to correct every mistake. Mistakes are going to happen. I think that's something that coaches and players need to, just, accept.
It's really funny too. I look back to kind of when I first got into coaching a little bit and all of that. And I mean, if you watch a rally, if we went and watched a 16U club tournament, it could be the best two teams in the country. In one rally, I could probably point out 100 things they should have done differently, or
Yeah.
they could do differently to be more efficient. Does that mean I should just tell them these 100 things? Of course not.
Nope.
Right? Does that mean that I need to prove that I know so much because I figured out these 100 things? Of course not. And that's a really challenging place to be as a coach. I feel really lucky that my transition into coaching was very much from an athlete perspective.
Hmm.
So I knew that when you're just getting feedback, guess what? You're not connected to the game. I'm not in any sort of flow state. I'm now just trying to, oh, I hope I don't screw it up because my coach keeps telling me that.
Right.
So to remind yourself, like, there's always something you can do better. You're always trying to pursue that. But what is actually high performance? It's certainly not giving all that information every single situation that you can, right? I think it's just a funny thing, and I get where it comes from because I've also had that impulse.
Yeah.
I've had that impulse of like, oh, do you see that? Oh, do you see that? Oh, that doesn't mean that I need to just send all that information there that way, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. So now, another cool journey you have is your Olympic journey. So, first of all, that first Olympics, Rio it was. What was it like, when you got back with the guys after the pro season, that first practice with the boys? Was it just like the guys are back together again?
It's funny because we had that Rio one was pretty wild because we, like I was mentioning, so it was 2015 and we were in, I think it was January or December, January, and we played Cuba and we lost in Canada. So then we went back to our pro clubs, assuming that we weren't going to make the Rio Olympics, right? Like we had kind of blown this big opportunity. We
Yeah.
beat Cuba a bunch and we, ended up losing to them 3-0. It was kind of devastating. Volleyball Canada made some good moves. We hired a mental performance coach. We kind of did some things. And then we had a last chance qualifier early in the summer. So we only knew that we were going to the Olympics for, a couple months.
Oh,
We really had to
wow.
grind for it. But then at that last chance qualifier, it was actually amazing because yeah, when we came back, everyone was like full tilt. Everything from that loss to Cuba to that last chance qualifier was very directed at we got to do everything we can to do this because the
Yeah.
route was going to be a lot harder. We had to play a lot more experienced teams. We had to win more games, all of that. And then when we ended up doing it, it's funny, we kept that momentum going. And then, we had a really successful for the experience of the team, for the level, for the place that we were at. We had an incredible Rio Olympics. I mean, we went in, we played the US and beat them 3-0 in our first
Wow.
game. And then we ended up finishing second in the pool of death. We're
Yeah.
looking at this pool. It has like the first place team, the second place team, the fourth place team in the world and whatever. And we were, 16, I don't know what we were, but something like that, 16. And, we ended up having a really good show. So that 8 months or whatever it was it was pretty, again, singular in its direction and ambition. And it was awesome. I mean, when we ended up qualifying, everyone was pretty pumped, but
Yeah.
we kind of were still feeding off that momentum.
Nice. And now, because you'd already been playing with the national team for a little while, did you know you were already, when Canada qualified for the Olympics, did you know you were part of that Olympic team, or was there still like a group of guys that they were going to pull, pick the 12 best and go with?
Yeah, I mean, at that time, again, there was a lot of really amazing athletes in Canada, but especially the Rio one, the team was not the team, but the kind of a few specific positions were pretty set.
Yeah.
We had been around for a while, but it's kind of one of those things where maybe it's pretty you can be pretty confident that there's like 6, maybe 8 guys that are going to go, but the other ones there's, a dozen guys that it could be.
Yeah.
Which for sure is like, so we ended up that year, we ended up winning that, or qualifying through that last chance qualifier. And then that year, because of a restructuring of Nations League and World League, we actually were in group 2. So we weren't in like the top group because I think there's only 12 or whatever, and for whatever reason we were kind of bumped down. But then we ended up winning group two. Um, but then on the last night where we're kind of all celebrating and whatever, the conversations were happening of who's going to go
Yeah.
to Rio. So I was in a fortunate position that I had played, pretty much all the games for the national team. I was a starter for a long time at that point. That I wasn't that concerned about it.
Yeah.
I was very much more concerned about, can we make it to the Olympics? Can we
Right.
win this group? Can we do all these things? Which is a really fortunate spot to be because that would have been so anxiety inducing. I felt
Right.
bad for a lot of my teammates because the reality is it's a really bizarre structure where every international competition you travel with 14.
Yeah.
And then for the Olympics, you travel with
12.
12. So two guys that always are with you now won't be,
Yeah.
right? Or, there's usually kind of people coming in and out, but now you know that there's less than normal, which is a bizarre event in
Yeah.
the scope of kind of what it looks like for volleyball. So yeah, I was kind of fortunate in that way, but still really weird times just due to that
Yep.
natural cut, and then the reality of, okay, this is the biggest event that Canada's participated in a
Yeah.
long time.
And speaking of that, when did that moment hit you, or did it even hit you, that how big of a moment it was? Here you are, you're representing Canada at the Olympics in Rio.
It's funny. I think even qualifying and doing all that stuff, it was more an idea. Like
Yeah.
the Olympics were just, it didn't mean anything actually that special to me. It was more, no, we just need to get to this thing.
Yeah.
You could have called it the Olympics, you could have called it World Championships, you could have called it whatever. But then when we actually got there, or even leading up to it, when we qualified, and then leading up to it, it was insane. I was doing interviews every day. I was doing so many people, so much demand. I'm getting messages from everyone I've ever met in my life. It was this funny thing because at that time I'd played a World Championships in Poland where there's 20,000 people in the stadium and 40,000 people outside the stadium. So we
Yeah.
played in front of a ton of people, but not the same connection to North America.
Right.
Like if I'm going into a World Cup game in Japan and there's a lot of people watching, my grade 8 teacher isn't texting me, "Hey, good luck."
Right.
They don't even know. But now you're going to the Olympics and you're getting messages from everyone that's
Yeah.
ever kind of been a part of it. And so yeah, that was kind of when it sank in. Was, okay, we're over. We kind of do our pre-tour in Brazil, and you're starting to get all these messages. I'm doing interviews all the time. You're doing whatever. You're like, okay, this is a different beast
Yeah.
to it, and we had some really defined rules that we wanted to follow as a team, to not get too caught up in that
Yeah.
because it is very unique. Again, I really probably not the same way for some of these other countries that big international tournaments are big all the time, like Poland, France,
Right.
Japan, Brazil. Everyone knows about all those tournaments. In Canada, not so much. So, it was unique in that way, but that was definitely the moment where I'm getting all these things. And then, I mean, you're eating lunch beside Michael Phelps and your Yao Ming's there and all
Yeah.
these different things. You're like, whoa, this is pretty wild.
Yeah.
But then you got in the gym, and honestly, it felt the exact same. I
Nice.
think like right before our first game against the US, I mean, physically, I was literally vibrating. Like I had so much adrenaline going through me.
Right.
I was so pumped up, and I think a lot of that was everyone in Canada was watching,
Yeah.
right? Again, I played in big tournaments. We had some success, but just the weight of that was pretty cool. And then once the game actually started, it's like, okay, it's like any other game. Like I remember that USA game. It's the first game of our Olympics, first game of the Olympics for Canada. I think it was 24 years. And I'm going back to serve for the first contact of the game, and I'm so jacked up. And I'm like, dude, you got to calm down. Dude, you got to calm down. And I go and I hit it like 60% to the bottom of the net. I'm just
Oh,
trying to like manage all this adrenaline, where
yeah.
in reality, I probably should just lean into it and ripped one.
Right.
But I was more like, hey, let's be tactical. Let's play the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was funny. I still remember. And I think, everyone turns around and we all kind of laughed. It was like this moment of like, oh, okay, yeah,
I
my
broke
bad,
the
guys.
tension
Obviously, it's
and
not
let's
what I
go.
normally do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And what an experience, because like you said, all of Canada's watching because your first match is against the US. And as a Canadian, you're like you want nothing better than to beat Team USA. That must have been such a wonderful feeling after that last point.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. I from going a few, 8 whatever months earlier to almost not being there, to then seeing, okay, we've got this pool of death with all these incredible
Right.
teams. It was also really fun because you could just go into it with a little bit of an underdog mentality. The
Yeah.
US for sure just felt the pressure of that game. We're also fortunate enough that I've had a really successful career against the US.
Yeah.
understand their style, understand their guys a lot. So it's easier to kind of play amongst that. We match up pretty well. Um, but then it was one of those ones after that happened, especially 3-0. Your expectations changed. Again, we were very prepped with our mental performance coaches and our sports psychs and all that sort of stuff of how we wanted this to go. And we did a lot of exercises like, okay, what if you win the game 3-0? What if you lose the game 3-0? What if it
Right.
goes 5 and you're tired? What if you, and we went through kind of all these, kind of examples of how we wanted to show up. But after that happened, we felt okay. And then our next game was against Brazil in Brazil, and we won the first set. And we're thinking we're winning the Olympics. You know what I mean? And it ended up being it was a great game. We ended up losing in four, quite close. But it was just one of those things where it was, again, I look back to my early days of I'm always trying to prove myself. I'm like, hey, I'm undersized. I got to find a way. And
Right.
now we're on literally the biggest stage in the world. And I had that same feeling like, okay, let's prove ourselves again. Let's do it again.
Yeah. Very cool. And then, the Tokyo Olympics, which is weird to begin with because of the whole pandemic aspect, you also in between had to deal with a big injury, right? A big back injury that you almost couldn't walk for 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, it was a crazy sort of between the Rio Olympics and Tokyo Olympics was quite crazy because after the Rio Olympics, so we had all this momentum, we got out of our pool, we ended up losing to Russia in the quarterfinals. And Russia was just a team again that we didn't match up very well against. Like we were kind of a physical team. We did some things. They were a more physical team,
Yeah.
Um, so we lost to them. But then the next season we had VNL and we beat Russia in the quarterfinals. And for the first time in history, we won a bronze medal and we won a medal at VNL. So we were very much, I think we got up to like fifth or sixth in the world.
Oh,
So,
wow.
when I was starting with the team, we were 20 something and we got
Yeah.
up to a good spot. So then we're going into the 2018 World Championships. And at that point, we had a coaching change after the Rio Olympics into this VNL bronze medal. And then we're going to World Championships and we're trying to win the World Championships. We're thinking, okay, we're going to medal, we're going to do that. And actually what ended up happening, I was playing in Poland in that year and I flew home from Poland. And then like 3 days later, I flew back to Poland
Yeah.
with the national team. So like I flew home, was home for 72 hours and I flew back. And when we landed, I was like, oh man, my body feels terrible, right? But I'm like, you're getting a little bit older. It's normal, whatever.
Right.
And then we went in and we were playing in a really big friendly competition in Poland. So there's like 20,000 people at this exhibition game. And, the practice the night before, I had to end a little bit early. My body wasn't feeling great. And up to this point, I'd played a lot of games. I would go and I'd play, every game with my pro team. And I'd come back and I'd play every game with the national team kind of deal. And so, we go into that game and I'm like, man, my something feels really off, like kind of head to toe, doesn't feel great. And
Yeah.
there's an early timeout. It was like 7-4, it felt like, or something like that. And I go to the bench and the feeling when you gotta like pop your elbow or your knee or whatever.
Right.
I had that in my hip. I'm like, I just need to pop my hip and I think it'll go back into place. So I went to our physio and I was like, hey, can you just pop my hip out whenever, it just feels weird. And I'm on the ground. She's doing this, like, in the middle of this timeout. And the coach walks over and is like, what's going on? Like, what's happening right now? I was like, and I kind of explained the story to him. And he's like, okay, well, it's a friendly match. It doesn't really matter. So he just subbed me out right away and kind of got it looked at. And body still didn't feel great. And then kind of right away, it was like turning a little bit into more of like a pain.
Yeah.
But as an athlete, you're kind of always in a little bit of pain. It's a normal experience. And it got to a point where I was like, okay. And we ended up getting some X-rays, CT scans, get some other people to look at it, and the integrity of my back was not looking great. Didn't look so bad yet, but it
Yeah.
was not looking great. And I started being in a lot of pain, and things were tensing up, whatever. But I was fortunate enough that the national team was doing everything they could. We were flying people in to try and osteos and different things to try and find solutions for it, because we had about I don't know 5 or 6 weeks up to World Championships. So we're there for friendly, and then we're going to train for a little bit. Then we're going to go to World Championships. And literally that 5 or 6 weeks was me just doing every therapy, every rehab thing we could try to do. And then going to the World Championships. It was much worse.
Yeah.
I was kind of kept pushing it, then it was getting worse. Then I'd push it, and then it was getting worse. And the first couple games of World Championships were against sort of lower level teams. So it was like, okay, I'd go in for a point here or there. Didn't feel good at all. I was in like a lot of pain. And then I still remember one moment I believe we were playing Brazil the next day. And I was very much like having to take medication, having to do, like, I would just be lying on the ground all the time, walking down to breakfast, I'm like climbing down the railing
Oh,
kind of thing. But very much in my mind, like and I say this very earnestly, like in my mind, I was like, oh, we're beating Brazil tonight. I didn't really get, I was in pain, sure, but I was like, no, but
I can still play.
we'll be able to turn it on and we'll do that. And that morning service eve, our coaches, serve, you're working on serve pass, that kind of thing. And I couldn't set off the passes because they weren't like right at me.
Yeah.
So the coach would come in and toss, and he tossed one just like, I don't know, a foot in front of me, and I just stepped onto my right foot and my body just like
Oh
collapsed.
wow.
And so I literally fell to the ground. Like I put all my weight on my right foot, and
Yeah.
it was the right side of my vertebrae. I'd fractured the left side, and the right side at that moment had fractured as well. And I fell to the ground, and it was kind of in that moment that I was like, oh, maybe I'm not helping our
Yeah.
team beat Brazil tonight. Like maybe this isn't happening. And that was like a big whirlwind because at that point, even for the last 6 weeks, there was a lot of denial. I was like, no, we're good. We're still
Right.
winning world championships, no problem. But then when that happened, right away, saw a lot of doctors, saw a lot of things. It's like, yeah, it's not looking good for you. So I didn't end up playing. I literally ended up laying on the bench. I couldn't stand or
Yeah.
sit on the bench, so I was laying on the baseline of the bench. And then flew back and saw an amazing team of doctors out here. Saw a bunch of different surgeons, saw a bunch of everything, and yeah, then it was like probably 3-ish months of I didn't really walk or move at all. I was
Yeah.
just sort of like in bed, and then I'd go and I'd lay on the floor and didn't move for a long time. Then I would, the next 3 months where I'd go do nothing all day, and then I'd go see my physio, and I'd have an exercise ball, and I'd do this like 5 times, and I'd have to go lie down. It was this kind of long grind
Yeah.
of all of that, and then started slowly getting back into it, and started slowly thinking, okay, maybe there's a chance. Because at that point, I'm thinking, well, I'm never gonna be able to play again.
Right.
Like every doctor's like, oh, I don't know, and just the way my body felt in that whole experience, I'm like, well, this it seems like a pretty uphill battle
Yeah.
for me to come back, but and also kind of a challenging place. Very much at that time, we've talked a lot about my ambition and moving forward. I mean, all that obviously kind of came crumbling down.
Yeah.
Um, so it's kind of this cool experience where I'm like, all right, we got to reflect on what I actually value and let's learn some stuff and have kind of this dark night of the soul a little bit. And yeah, then ended up
Wow.
having, again, a pretty long recovery to starting to compete again. And then I attempted to play professionally in Poland again, but my back just gave out right
Yeah.
away.
Oh geez.
It just couldn't handle the load at all. And then came back and we played Cuba. It's kind of this cool full circle moment where in 2015 we lost to Cuba
Right.
to go to Rio. Now it's 2020. We're playing Cuba. Winner goes to Tokyo. And this time, 2015, I'm like young, ambitious, invincible, whatever. And now I'm got a back brace and I'm standing float serving and I'm taking medication to try and handle it. And
Yeah.
and so it's a pretty cool full circle
Nice.
moment for sure.
And now, during that period of recovery, how did you end up, how did you stay connected to, the team and, sort of not like throw in a towel?
It's funny. I don't know if I'd say I would. I was quite bitter. I was quite angry. I think a lot of that came from I gave my life to this thing, and then this thing did this back to me. Like that whole ecosystem to trying to
Yeah.
figure that out. And it's tough too because I really wanted to compete at that World Championships, and I really wanted to win that medal to a point that I probably did things that maybe I shouldn't have done. Like I probably pushed myself
Yeah.
more that led to that recovery even being more. So there's kind of a resentment to that, to not trusting myself or my body or different moments like that. So there was a long time where I kind of took some time away from volleyball. I didn't really want to think about it so much, and actually what ended up happening, and I'm still eternally grateful for it. But probably about 6 months into that, coming back to Canada and that injury, I had the opportunity to go to up to the Arctic to support a psychosocial program up there, which was basically like using volleyball to reach, help build other life skills.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't until I went up there and was like, oh, volleyball's pretty cool. Like we can learn a lot of different things, right? You're so hyper focused for so long on winning and championships and all that and legacy and all that sort of stuff. Where then I went up there and I'm like, oh no, I can just teach you something and you can understand it and then go play better and feel the confidence and feel connected and all that. And really going up there kind of ignited this thought of like, okay, volleyball is actually pretty cool
Yeah.
and I actually do love it. And so I was kind of coming out of that resentment, bitter, kind of angry
Yeah.
place, and was like, okay, this is actually pretty neat.
Nice. And it was that, was that the moment, coaching sort of lit the fire inside of you? Was like, hey, I can, this is something that I can do down the road.
I don't know that. I felt like it was just a very human experience. It was like, oh, I happen to have this expertise and I show it to you and I experience your confidence or joy or whatever. And that felt really good. I still wasn't in the phase of really thinking about coaching.
Yeah.
I was just more, this is really cool,
Yeah.
right? Like this is a really neat relationship that we now have. We're both learning together, alongside each other, all that sort of stuff. I would say, if anything, that reignited volleyball in me. So then
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I want to go and try and play in Tokyo. Um, but then being up there more and more and more, then over time, I started to, yeah, kind of get that itch of what volleyball coaching could be.
Yeah. Nice. And I also heard that you had to test your firefighting skills too while you were up there.
Oh yeah, we did have lots of fires. Yeah, it was pretty intense. I mean, the cool thing about I mean, it's so neat because when you're in the Arctic, resourcefulness is just an obvious. You have to be extremely resourceful. If something happens in my life here in Calgary, you call the specialist, you call the whatever. If
Right.
something happens, where there you don't. And it's funny. I was going from this phase of being so like such a niche setting in volleyball as my expertise,
Yeah.
where I didn't really come from a lot of other life skills around that, and so to be up there and yes, there was definitely several fires actually that we had to attempt to put out. And again, it just goes back to it was very much a human experience first, then a volleyball
Yeah.
experience. Volleyball is just sort of the vehicle of how we grew and how we connected and created safe space socially and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's all these other cool things that and even while I was up there, so after the Tokyo Olympics, we moved up there and lived up there for two
Oh,
years, and I
wow.
actually taught high school as well
Oh,
while I was up
shoot.
there.
Very cool.
And I'm not a high school teacher. It was very much hey, we need a high school teacher.
Yeah.
Could you be a high school teacher? And I was like, well, I don't know. And they're like, well, we'll help you out. I was like, okay, cool. So that also kind of ignited that coaching, that mentorship
Yeah.
side to it, where things kind of evolved from there. Yeah.
Nice. And after that first stint from, up in Nunavik, you came back. Was there a moment, you played pro and went to the Olympics. Was there a moment that like you realized I'm really back? I'm back being that national level, that high performance setter again.
Yeah, it's a good question. My mind never stopped being that. I still thought about the game the same way. I still saw things. What I actually really appreciated is I went from being young, being able to push myself in any way I wanted to, being able to do everything I can, to being extremely limited. So I had to get much more creative in how I saw things.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get this big block. I'm not going to get this crazy play. I'm not going to do this crazy thing. So I had to find again, going back to that idea of kind of being gritty and having your chip on your shoulder, like even more now. And I actually love that. I really enjoyed okay, I have to be more creative than I've ever been. But I knew, again, both from supporting my doctors and surgeons and things, that I knew this would be the thing that kind of tapers off my career.
Yeah.
Like I knew that was going to kind of be the end. And I very much, just the timing of it all, I looked at, okay, going to one more Olympics would be awesome. It'd be great to, help younger ambitious setters coming up and kind of support them through that transition. But I knew that if we qualified for Tokyo, that would be, the end.
Yeah. And then speaking of, you did qualify for Tokyo. We had the pandemic. Talking to Eric Shoji, he was saying, yeah, that was a surreal experience. Empty stadiums, and it was just like, how about for you? What did you come away from Tokyo with that was like a non-volleyball experience?
Yeah, I mean, comparing it to Rio, it was brutal. Like it would have been awesome if, the experience in Rio was just fantastic. Gym was packed. It's obviously in Brazil, right? Gym is packed.
Yeah.
Fans are crazy. There's so many things you can do. There's the Nike house, the Adidas house, you're going to all these cool experiences, where in Tokyo is very different. But for me, just on more of a personal note, it was, again, Rio. I'm thinking I'm going to play for another 20 years. I'm thinking
Right.
whatever, where Tokyo, it's like, I know this is the last tournament I'm ever going to play in. So it's really easy to just, soak it in
Yeah.
and be present and be grateful for the experience. I found that quite easy.
Mm-hmm.
It was cool to have some perspective. I mean, I remember kind of FaceTiming and chatting with some kids up north and being like, oh yeah, this is the village. I remember cool different things. My perspective was much different.
Yeah.
In Rio, it was like blinders were on. we're here to win the gold
Yeah.
medal. Tokyo was like, okay, this is kind of the last hurrah. Let's embrace it a little
Yeah.
bit, which is also cool because actually at the Tokyo Olympics in that 3 year period, I probably felt the best I did. So I also got the experience to play again. Like
Yeah.
it felt like playing. It didn't feel like this grind in the same way. So I kind of got to ignite that a little bit as well. So yeah, I mean, it definitely wasn't the same as Rio. I think it was cool in
Yeah.
these different ways, but it was more for me personally
Yeah.
in the shifts. Yeah.
And then, that when you get to that point where you're ready to retire from pro, was that a big hurdle, or like you said, you've recognized Tokyo is probably going to be it for you. Were you ready for retirement?
I think just because it was such a long process, it was 3 years of basically hearing that, yeah, this is going to be the thing that forces you into retirement to some degree. So I knew it was coming. I wasn't surprised by it.
Yeah.
I honestly, I wasn't even, it wasn't that challenging just because it was such a long run up.
Yeah.
And also it was out of my control.
Yeah.
I can't go and fix it. And every surgeon I talked to, there really wasn't anything to solve it yet technologically, and everything that I would do could compromise things down the road. And so it was kind of like, okay, I have to come to terms with
Yeah.
it. There's nothing really else that I can do. And I think just when you're in a position like that, it's a little bit easier to wrap your head around it as opposed to I'm sure it'd be very difficult if you were the one having to make a choice or
Right.
based on a bunch of different things. I didn't really have a choice.
All right. And now, now that you're retired, you've been out for a few years, what advice do you have for player, I know everybody's situation is different, but other pro players that are facing this daunting challenge, like, holy cow, my life is changing because I'm no longer going to be that pro athlete. Now I've got to step into, the normal world.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the a lot of the fear that I had was like, well, am I ever going to be good at anything else? Am I ever going to find anything like that? Like,
Yeah.
you're so driven in one direction and so obsessed about such a niche thing that it's like, well, is that ever going to happen? And the cool thing is that yeah, it can if you want it to. Maybe you don't want to be that singularly focused, and maybe you want to focus on other things. That's okay. But I think I was very fortunate, again, in how that all played out because then it very much landed on, okay, what are my core values? What do I want life to look like after this?
Yeah.
What does make me feel good? Why did I get into volleyball in the first place? How do I want to connect to all those things? I think if there's any advice is um, to start reflecting as early as you can on those questions. Like why do you play volleyball? For me, it was very much it felt good to win. It felt good to be validated. It gave me a community. It gave me all these different things. Maybe outside volleyball, you can find all those same things.
Yeah.
Maybe it can also feel good to build a house. Maybe you can also have a community within your neighborhood. Maybe you can all all those things that you got from volleyball, you can get elsewhere. And it's okay to look at that stuff. I
Yeah.
think when I was playing, it was like that felt like a distraction or that felt like giving up on the dream or whatever, where I think it's just important to have that perspective. I was very much forced into that perspective with the back injury, but
Right.
um, and then yeah, you get to look at okay, what do I actually want from all this,
Yeah.
and I think it's really common that a lot of volleyball players just kind of go back into coaching or go back into volleyball as an outlet because that's where so much of their passions come from. Where I feel very fortunate that I stepped away from it.
Right.
Like yes, I was up in the north and we were working in volleyball. But that wasn't why I was there, and that wasn't the intention behind it. So then I got to when I ended up coming back to volleyball to have a different perspective on it, right? I wasn't so stuck in that
Yeah.
that ecosystem a little bit. And it's cool because I think, all of us again as humans, we have these moments where we evolve or grow in different ways where okay, when the thing you've been focused on for the last 20 years gets taken away from you, okay, it's a really interesting opportunity to evaluate
Yeah.
and kind of reassess.
Yeah, when I had Kavika on, he was talking about when he retired, he didn't even think about volleyball for 2 years. He didn't want to touch a volleyball. It was just, and then, but over time, he did come back gradually to coaching and whatnot. So it's interesting to see, a similar story of what you did, like just sort of, disconnecting and eventually coming back to the sport.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're so close to it, you don't appreciate this is like anything, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to appreciate it in the same way. So you step away from it and then you go back to it and yeah, it's just a really cool reset for sure.
Nice. All right, so let's geek out a little bit with some setter talk here because I've got
Okay.
one of the best here. So, you know, what does high volleyball IQ look like in a young setter, and how can coaches help build that?
I think probably the biggest thing is just making intentional decisions. Making decisions. It's not making the right decision
Hmm.
because you're a young setter. You don't know what the right decision yet is. And I think that's a good thing. Like I think Yeah, I kind of use the language of you have this resource library as a setter.
Yeah.
I feel fortunate that when the ball is passed in front of me and I'm moving forward and my middle stays with me, but then they go behind me and I've got a small setter and I have whatever, that situation has happened to me thousands of times. So I know what to do in that situation. I know
Right.
how to expose the other side and do different things according to that. Where when you're young, you don't. You've maybe been in that situation 10 times. So you're not going to make the right decision, but you still want to have an intention behind it. I
Hmm.
still think that when you look at really high performers, high IQ players, there's a reason. There's an intention behind it. It's not random. Where I think volleyball becomes a sport that it's moving super fast, that a lot of things end up becoming pretty random,
Yeah.
which is also okay. If it's random, then go, oh, wow, I got lost in the cycle of that rally.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not gathering the information that I want to. Where really, to me, if you're making decisions that have a reason behind it and there's some intention behind it, you're already in a great
Yeah.
spot. Because then when you go and you execute and it doesn't work, you go, oh, that didn't work, and you learn from it.
Right.
Or you do it and it worked. Again, if you have that and it works or doesn't work, then you're putting it into that resource library.
Yeah.
If you're just making random decisions, nothing's going into that, right? So we
Right.
want to kind of learn from those
Yeah,
experiences.
I love that library term. I heard that from one of your videos you had, and it's like, oh, I'm stealing that one because that is such a good visual for kids. Like, oh yeah, I've got my now I know what to do in this situation or that situation. That's your library.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now I listened a little. I listened to a bit of you talking about some coaches do the left right or the right left, and it's not always set in stone. Whatever may work is, and I think you brought up a great visual of getting your hips there is the key versus your feet or your hands to a ball.
Yeah, I think in North America we are so obsessed with very literal technical cues, and that comes from a good place. I look at techniques as, and I say this all the time, techniques are tools. You need to learn and refine a tool to execute,
Hmm.
for sure. But there are different tools that you can use. And I joke, in the US, the left-right footwork is extremely dominant,
Yeah.
which is fascinating to me because in the international world, it is by far the minority. You will never see a men's, if you went and watch the Olympics, you'd never see them go left, right. It like maybe one unique situation where they're
Right.
just trying to balance themselves, so they end up like that. So I always find it fascinating when, okay, this isn't necessarily translating to that. So then you start to reflect, okay, what is the intention of this left, right? And it's quite straightforward. Most young setters, if we do go right, left, that left foot isn't planted hard enough and we kind of fade away or we fall through the set.
Yeah.
So easy solution, go left, right. You're forced to stop that momentum to then plant your right foot. So you're kind of re-engaging in that momentum in a different way. What a what a it makes so much sense that that is a solution. But then what are the consequences of that? Right now you're a little bit more closed off to the ball.
Right.
Now with your momentum going this way, I want a neutral momentum. I don't want momentum going anywhere. I want to be able to displace that
Hmm.
force however I want. If I'm going left, right, now I'm moving forward still, right? Like I would rather be just kind of neutral. And it's funny because, it's just also amazing working with, I feel very fortunate. I've worked with thousands of setters now. And these cues, I see these patterns emerge where if you say get your feet to the ball, they're going to fall through the set.
Yeah.
They're just worried about their feet. Where the more we talk about our hips and having good posture and these different kind of cues and tools that we can use, the more we can execute in the way we want to. And
Yeah.
I just always found the left right one to be really fascinating because it is not what you see internationally.
Yeah.
And I think my role and responsibility in the volleyball community is connecting those dots of
Yeah.
why are we doing things internationally versus how can we teach those things.
Yeah.
It does not mean that left right is bad. It does not mean that right left is bad. It does not mean that pivoting is bad. It
Yeah.
means that's a tool. What's the intention? What are you trying to do with that tool? And is it leading to the outcome you want?
Yeah.
Right? I think for a lot of young setters, left right is going to be great.
Hmm. And the other thing you just touched on is like you want to be neutral, and when you're neutral, you don't have any tendencies. People can't oh, you're focused. Everything's gonna be forward set. You're not can't do a back set. Versus if you're just calm, they don't know where you could go.
Yeah, and I think what's fun about setting is really all you're trying to do is get to a position where you can set wherever you want.
Yeah.
Where from a very young age, the technique that we learn, and this is not a consequence of coaches or whatever, just the reality, we learn setting back of the ball. Somebody like tosses to it, we set it, then we start back setting and we arch our back or whatever. And we have a lot of these compensations because being neutral is very challenging. It's very hard to
Hmm.
actually fully be neutral. And it's fun because then it's just like that's kind of our goal. What ends up happening as a consequence is if you can set anywhere, you could feel confident setting anywhere. If I'm always falling into the ball or reaching into the ball or doing this and that, it becomes very challenging to actually be able to execute. Where if
Yeah.
you get your hips there, if you're stable, again, sometimes you might jump through it. That's normal, right? Like if you're taking off one foot, if you're doing different things
Yeah.
in different situations. But if you've got your posture, from there, you kind of have this launching off point that you can
Yeah.
set accordingly.
Absolutely. And when it comes to younger setters, every, and granted, every setter is going to be different. Everybody has a different skill set. But when do you think setters should start looking at, jump setting or looking at being more tactical, looking at blockers, recognizing matchups and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's this cool evolution of setting. I think when we talk about jump setting, I mean, the first cue or metric that we want to reach is you want to be really comfortable using the ground. Meaning I can get there, I can create some friction on the ground, my hips are with me, and then I can set from there.
Yeah.
Then, once you're there, okay, then leaving the ground shouldn't be any different, right? But a lot of us, we maybe don't track the ball to the position we want. We maybe don't this and that, and things happen accordingly. So that's kind of step one. And I also, reflect all the time. Okay, I ask younger setters, why do we jump set? And there's this big like, oh, to get power, or to do this, and there's just this misunderstanding where why we're jump setting is just to be a little bit closer to our attackers. If I'm a
Hmm.
little bit closer, that shortens the time. If I shorten the time, it stresses out the other team.
Right.
That's the main reason. Then from there, there's going to be some rhythm. It's going to start to feel comfortable, all that sort of stuff for sure. But it's not we jump set because that's what good setters do.
Right.
We jump set for a reason. Now, if you're front row, this is an answer I get all the time too is, when you're front row, you can then attack 100%. And I'm like, oh, so then do you not jump set when you're back row? And they're like, oh, no, we still do. And I'm like, well, okay, if you're playing a good team, they should pick up on that. And then there's no real advantage. There's an advantage in jump setting,
Hmm.
but it also then shows us for push way past the 10-foot line, maybe jumping isn't the advantage we want. Maybe there's a different tool we want to pick up. And you see
Hmm.
this happen all the time in international men's volleyball where, yeah, most of the time we're going to jump set. But you'll see a lot of setters stay on the ground to create other things,
Right.
right? Jump setting is a tool. And I think like any tool, like jump setting, like looking to the other side, like running overloads, like whatever, is a tool that we use to create better situations for our attackers. That's really the baseline for me.
Yeah.
Once you're kind of have reached a moment where you're consistent in these different patterns, then for sure we level up. Then we level up. But we
Yeah.
also need to have an understanding of why we're doing those
Yeah.
things before we just do them.
Excellent. A couple of fun question here. So Ed Eric showed you on him and Taylor Averill had this thing. What's the toughest position in volleyball? So
Yeah.
TJ, I'm pretty sure it's going to be setter, but what's the toughest position in volleyball?
Yeah, interesting answer. It's funny. I did this on social media a little while back where I asked ChatGPT and it did say setter. So
Yeah.
I can actually remove myself and say that artificial intelligence has established that yes, it is the
Yeah.
setter. But I would also say it depends what we mean by toughest, obviously. I think that uh, for me to play a position, it would for sure be middle.
Yeah.
You're working so hard, you're constantly spinning, you're having to move out, you're having to do all these different things, and you're not really getting rewarded for it at all.
Yeah.
That sounds very hard. And also, I'm undersized, so blocking was obviously very
Yeah.
challenging for me.
Excellent. All right.
But I do think, the sophistication in setting, kind of got me there for
Yeah.
sure.
All right. Second one, I got Chris. I had Christian Herr. He's the PME volleyball guy. He had a question he posed to Team USA during his VNL tour, and I love it. He says, "What's the easiest position in volleyball?"
Ooh, I think there's a couple different answers here. I think, and you can kind of go both ways. I think the easiest in terms of your responsibility is going to be your opposite,
Yep.
right? You're not having to pass, you're not having to do all these things. But then what's also funny is then that gets leveraged so far that for a lot of professional teams, a lot of high level teams, you get all the gross sets, you get all the difficult situations, and you're still expected to put it away.
Right.
So it's kind of the easiest, but then it's also becomes the
Yeah.
hardest because of that. And then the other one I would say is probably the libero
Yeah.
because you're not like engaged in as many skills, but then the exact same thing. Then maybe you only get served twice a game. But if you mess up one of those receptions, then it becomes the hardest.
You've got
right?
one
'Cause then
thing to
it's all of
do.
a sudden-
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I think that's the cool thing about it is you're really hit with both sides of it. The
Yeah.
same way that being a middle to me, I said is the hardest. It's also you maybe don't get set once the whole set, you don't get any blocks and whatever, like nobody really notices.
Right.
Right. So it's kind of this cool give and take.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, TJ, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. But before I let you go, I look for guests to recommend somebody in your volleyball circle that would have a good story to come on and share.
Ooh, nice. Okay, who would I recommend? I would probably recommend Eric Lepke. That
Okay.
would be my my go-to.
We'll get him on. All right. Well,
Awesome.
again, thank you so much, CJ. Wonderful meeting you.
Yeah, you too. That was awesome. And